Hello, welcome back to the International Conference on Climate Emergency and Health. I hope you enjoyed your meal. I hope you enjoyed the morning. We're really happy to have you back here in the afternoon. We're going to give you some thematic sessions, and our first thematic session will be on food security. It will be moderated by Jean-Clovis Kalobou, and he is in a good company, good international company, because we're going to Belgium and to the République démocratique du Congo, but also to the Philippines and Tanzania. So it will be a very nice mixture of people all over the world. We're trying to handle this technically, but till now, everything went fine. So enjoy this session on food security with Jean-Clovis Kalobou, medical advisor of MEMISA Belgium.
Bonjour à tous et bienvenue à la plénière sur la sécurité alimentaire. Nous allons commencer avec la première présentation qui nous sera donnée par Dr Juste Momboto Mosoko, qui est coordinateur régional de MEMISA en RDC. C'est un expert en santé publique et qui a longtemps travaillé dans la zone de santé de Bokonzi, où il a pris le goût de la protection de l'environnement. Nous allons suivre scrupuleusement sa présentation. Nous donnons la parole à Juste Momboto.
Les des échanges que nous avons eus, la population du village Bondanga, situé en République démocratique du Congo. Concernant l'impact du changement climatique, la santé, la population, le changement climatique sur la santé, sur la santé. Les présentations s'articulent sur 5 points. Donc, nous avons parlé premièrement de l'introduction, dans laquelle on peut brièvement la situation de la manifestation, car c'est de ça qu'il s'agit, en République démocratique du Congo, une manifestation qui est issue d'une insécurité alimentaire provoquée elle-même par le changement climatique dans le cas. Deuxièmement, je vais parler un peu de la méthodologie pour avoir les informations que j'ai partagées avec vous. Je vais parler des résultats à compter sur le terrain et on va faire une petite discussion que nous avons essayé de présenter et la conclusion de notre expérience. En guise d'introduction, nous savons tous que le changement climatique sera la source des problèmes de santé. Dans les Nations Unies, le changement climatique a des problèmes d'alimentation entraînant la sous-nutrition dans les populations vulnérables. La République démocratique du Congo n'échappe pas à cette problématique, avec ces 27 millions de personnes qui sont en situation d'insécurité alimentaire aiguë, en raison d'une crise humanitaire complexe, liée notamment au conflit avec les déplacements des populations, l'instabilité économico-politique au niveau du pays et ça s'ajoute là les aléas naturels sanitaires, notamment le Covid-19. Les pays les plus grands en termes de nombre de populations, de personnes qui sont en crise sanitaire dans le monde. Donc, en chiffre absolu, la RDC est le pays où il y a le plus grand nombre de personnes qui ont une insécurité alimentaire. Et toutes ces descriptions du est aggravée par le changement climatique qui actuellement doit être considéré comme une véritable pandémie à combattre tant ses effets sur la santé de nos populations. Et ainsi même les JO où les oasis ont croyé sans problème d'alimentation jusqu'à ce jour commencent déjà à ressentir les effets pervers du changement climatique. C'est le cas du village de Bondanga, qui se trouve dans la région de Bokonzi. Dans laquelle le bassin de Antiri, qui est une réserve naturelle, avec un écosystème local bien connu des environnementalistes qui sont avec. Donc, je vous montre là où se trouve Bondanga. Donc, c'est au nord-ouest de la République démocratique du Congo, comme vous le voyez, la RDC est en Afrique centrale. C'est une région marécageuse, inondable, où on ne peut pas faire l'agriculture. Ce qui fait que cette population, on dit riveraine, mais exclusivement c'est du fruit de la pêche. Ils n'ont rien d'autre. Ils pêchent les poissons et ils vont revendre dans les marchés environnementaux qui se trouvent dans les environs de leur village, donc dans les lieux où il n'y a pas, là où c'est sec, là où il y a la terre ferme, et ils peuvent se procurer ainsi les autres biens nécessaires. Ils vivent un peu en autarcie, comme on dit. Donc c'est au nord-ouest, dans les bassins de l'Anguille, là, on voit les villages bondants là. Et du point de vue méthodologique, je peux dire que nous avons travaillé avec les registres de l'air de santé Makengo, grâce à laquelle nous avons pu parler des manifestations. Nous avons consulté les HSD, la zone de santé de Bokonji, et surtout nous sommes allés place. Quand on a vu ces données inquiétantes, nous sommes allés sur place pour réviser des informateurs clés sur ces pays nouveaux qui n'étaient pas au niveau de l'aire de santé le village Bondal. Et nous avons eu des résultats qui nous ont dit, donc on a eu une mention nécessaire. La saison sèche était de plus en plus longue. La saison sèche, normalement, va de novembre en février, mais pour l'année 2021, par exemple, jusqu'au mois de juin et juillet, il n'y a eu que 5 pluies, alors que d'habitude, pendant ces 2 mois-là, les pluies sont tragiques. Et après ces rares pluies, donc après cette période de rareté des pluies d'avril jusqu'à juin, on a eu droit à des pluies quotidiennes qui ont causé des montées d'eau rapides et qui ont causé ce qu'on appelle les inondations. Et dans le système fragile de l'Anguille, nous avons tous remarqué qu'il y a eu des perturbations du cycle de reproduction des poissons, avec comme conséquence diminution de la quantité de poissons dans les rivières et même de la disparition de certaines espèces. Donc, ce sont les informations que nous transmettons. Il y a des espèces qui étaient dans leur coin qui ne se voient plus, et même les restes des espèces qui sont visibles maintenant, le nombre est de plus en plus décrescendo. Donc, de moins en moins, une quantité de poissons insuffisante. Il y a plus suffisamment de poissons au niveau de l'air cours d'eau et des forêts immergées dans les pays. Et l'autre conscience, il y a une malnutrition. Il y a 10 ans, on avait 0 cas de malnutrition. Mais maintenant, on a eu 70 enfants qui ont été déclarés malnutris. Et on pense que c'est dû à la conséquence de l'insuffisance alimentaire parce que les parents n'arrivaient plus à avoir suffisamment de quoi combler les besoins en nutriments. Et ça va même au-delà de la nutrition. Actuellement, au ministère de Santé, pendant la période où nous étions, donc au mois de juin, on avait vu que 20% des personnes qui ont consulté le centre de santé le faisaient accès. Donc, ils venaient, ils disaient qu'il n'y a pas de poisson, les infirmiers, les infirmiers titulaires, ils prennent en charge le ménage à crédit. Et ils vont payer quand ils auront le moyen de le faire. Parce que le moyen, il y en a. Et il y a aussi des autres éléments qu'on voit. Il y a beaucoup de familles qui n'arrivent plus à supporter cette situation, qui ont préféré partir, qui sont allés dans des villes. Avec toutes les conséquences qu'on est de l'exode rural, on va dans un environnement qu'on pense meilleur, mais qu'on rencontre beaucoup d'aléas dans la vie en ville, notamment la ville de Bon, donc, discussion et puis ces solutions, ce qui est sûr, c'est que nous avons d'abord proposé les propos de nos personnes clés, des informateurs, avec la situation qui a eu lieu ces dernières années au niveau de la rivière Ubangui, au niveau des actions. Pendant la période d'août-septembre, on avait des crues qui causaient beaucoup de dégâts au niveau notamment de la Zongo et des Tongo, de la rivière Ubangui. Donc, c'est quelque chose que nous courons. Bon, comme toutes les solutions, le système de santé local a proposé ça dans le système sévère. Ils ont intégré ça dans leur système de santé local. Les aliments qu'on peut trouver localement dans les marchés locaux pour prendre en charge les enfants la population les plus à risque. Dans les RDC, la malnutrition est souvent prise en charge par les femmes. Le système de santé lui-même ne prenait pas en charge la malnutrition. Mais grâce au leadership de la zone de santé, proposer cette solution innovante avec la participation de la communauté pour permettre la prise en charge mais plus que des enfants et des femmes enceintes. C'est une solution que nous trouvons très innovante dans le point parce qu'il n'y en avait pas. C'est pratiquement les zones de santé. Et il y a une nécessité d'une approche d'urgence pour trouver une solution à long terme. Donc, inciter les villageois à faire d'autres débouchés que la pêche, parce que c'est une situation qui est urgente. Ils ne peuvent rien faire, chercher à faire autre chose. On a proposé notamment l'élevage, parce qu'on a trouvé ça aussi. Il y a certains villageois qui ont commencé à faire l'élevage de canards, qui est adapté dans la région, qui sait nager et qui se nourrit de certains nutriments trouvés dans l'eau. Donc, l'élevage des animaux du canard marche très bien. Mais à un niveau supérieur, nous voulons faire un plaidoyer pour une protection de l'environnement. Pourquoi? Parce que nous avons senti qu'il y a une déforestation locale en amont du village de Wondala. Et cette déforestation, donc avec les gens qui font maintenant des cultures sur l'île, une coupe de l'arbre, c'est connu, ça entraîne aussi une évolution en amont. Et il y a ensablement de l'eau. Parfois, c'est compliqué. Quand il y a ensablement de l'eau, les poissons, les mêmes dit que les poissons sont maintenant des plus difficiles à trouver parce que l'eau n'est plus profonde. Et bien entendu, dans le cadre de la protection aussi, il faut faire respecter les lois relatives à la pêche, le rôle de pêche au niveau du Bondala. Nous avons eu des contraintes. Nous sommes devant une population pauvre, comme toute la population congolaise en général. Il n'y a pas beaucoup de gens qui ont la population vit avec moins d'un euro par jour là-bas. Et comme vous le savez, cette pauvreté est souvent c'est un cercle vicieux. On adopte des comportements qui ne favorisent pas la sortie de cette pauvreté. Notamment, les us et coutumes qui sont contraires à la santé. Là-bas, la polygamie, c'est quand même quelque chose qui est toute homosexualité normale avec beaucoup d'enfants. On n'a pas de moyens. Donc, avec le peu de moyens qu'on a, on a encore la pression démographique qui n'arrange pas les choses. Et dans les partages du repas, je crois que le chef de famille a souvent la vision alors qu'il n'y en a plus besoin. Ce sont les enfants qui ont le plus besoin justement adéquats. Comme conclusion, le changement climatique est une réalité qui peut nous parler. Même pour nos communautés qui se trouvent très fragilisées face à cette situation. On suivait la télé, on pensait que c'est noir, mais on s'est rendu compte qu'à côté de nous, il y a des gens qui sont souffrent du changement climatique et des perturbations des écosystèmes locaux que ce changement entraîne. Parce que le changement d'allongement de la saison sèche, avec le but qui vient percer l'écosystème local, et il y a une des répercussions que beaucoup de personnes qui dépendent des ressources locales. Et nous avons vu aussi qu'il y a une nécessité d'une solution globale liée à l'environnement, liée à la santé, donc dans la cadre de la prise en charge, liée à la politique qu'on applique pour protéger l'environnement, notamment la lutte contre la déforestation, la lutte contre l'érosion du sol et les dragages des eaux qui sont déjà en charge. Donc, en ces mots, nous avons voulu porter le petit alarme de la population de Bondanga, qui n'est pas client, nous savons. Nous vous demandons à tous de rester avec nous pour des solutions durables à ces problèmes qui deviennent de plus en plus utiles dans nos communautés. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Just Mabuto, for your presentation. We would like to ask all participants to write their questions, their comments, their concerns about this presentation, to please write them down in our chat box in order for us to give your presentation to the three presenters. We are now moving on to the second speaker, Mr. Matthias, who is very much experienced in Enabel, has been working for Enabel since 2008. He's been working as a portfolio, as health and food safety portfolio manager, and he will make his presentation, which is mainly about nutrition and health as a result indicators for integrated approaches, climate sensitive programs. You have the floor. Thank you, Jean-Clovis. My name is Matthias Lardinois. I am the portfolio manager for Enabel in Mauritania. And I would like to present you what I did in Tanzania in the previous occupation around a food program and livestock management. My presentation will be in English, as the material is in English. And let me tell you, it is some anticipation for tomorrow, as we are presenting solution more than a state of play of the climate change impact on health. So my presentation is very synthetic. If you want to know more, please take a look at my LinkedIn profiles. You will find publication with videos. So there we go.
Voilà, j'espère que la présentation est bien affichée.
I do hope you can see my presentation.
Préviendra si ce n'est pas le cas.
And I suppose the technical
so
team
my
will tell
presentation, I
me
will
if
do it
this
in English.
should not be the case.
It's about a food security program that have been implemented in the north part of Tanzania for 5 years. My Shabora in Swahili, it means happy and healthy life. So it's really on topics with this conference. The general objective was to improve food security for households in 15 villages. And the specific objective, you will see already the theme of my presentation, is higher and more secure income used for nutrition and improve local availability of food for 9,000 households in 15 villages, targeting 40% of impoverished households, women and youth. And the focus of my presentation as solution is to demonstrate the opportunity to link different type of intervention, different type of sectors and different type of actors. My Shabora brought together different components. The first one was about livestock management, because Maasai people, they are livestock herders, pastoralists, and it is the main source of income. Using that source of income, the objective was to develop some new revenues, and part of the new revenues to use it for nutrition to have a healthy family. And we had also water component, focusing on productive water for livestock, but also on water for people, for health, and for schools. Like I said, it was a multi-actor, multi-sectoral food security program that was designed from the start with this multisectoral approach. So we had each different component. The first result about livestock as pastoralists was implemented by VSF, Belgian NGO. The water component was implemented by Île de Paix, Belgium, also a Belgian NGO. The business component was implemented by Trias, another Belgian NGO. The nutrition component was implemented by the World Food Programme. And we designed the program together and we had the same specific objective to achieve. So that's really an integrated program. You didn't see on the logo of the program the coordination, but it was a specific results that Enable implemented, the coordination of all these different results, and also the link between those implementing partners and the local authorities. So that was from the start also an explicit result of the program, and a very important one. And I don't say that because Enable implemented it and I was the manager of that, but it was the donor, which was the DGD, the Belgian government, who specifically requested that explicit result about coordination based on the lesson learned of all the previous intervention they financed on the food security. In short, we used the principle developed by some some organization that has called Managing Successful Program. It's the same that developed Prince2, if you know about methodologies to manage projects and programs. And we use those guiding principles to steer the program together. There are 7 principles. The 2 concern the value addition. So a program should be more than the sum of all its components. So it is not an addition of intervention and we meet once a year in a steering committee and then everybody goes its own way during the rest of the year. No, it was really looking for synergies on a day-to-day basis and trying to complement each other. And that has been done by designing and delivering a current capability. So really our respective results and the respective results of each implementing partner took into account the result of the others. It was a proactive and deliberate common reflection. Another core principles is about social dynamic. So a program like an intervention is not something that we define at the beginning and then we look what's the result 5 years after. So really we need to lead the change and that was done at different level, beginning with the partners at the government of the local government, from the national to the villages, also relying on civil society organization, on traditional leaders to make sure that all the activities and the deliverables, the results that were delivered by the implementing partners were taken into account and used by the beneficiaries. Leading change required to make people dream and to make people understand why it is interesting for them to change. So the principle is called envisioning and communicating a better future. And it's really important to explain why we are doing what we are doing and why we want to do that together. And the last group is about adaptation. Like I said, we don't define a program and then 5 years after we say, okay, oh, it didn't work. It required a constant and regular alignment with the priorities from the Belgian government and the Tanzanian government And for example, for the Belgian government, we had a change of minister, so we had a change of priorities, and we had to take that into account in our strategies. We need also to focus on the benefits and the threat to them. So it's really important not to stay at the level of the activities, but really to focus on the objective we want to achieve, and if necessary, change the activities and even change some results. And last but not least, we needed to learn from our experience. So every year we did some reflection with the implementing partner, but with our partners also, Tanzanian partners, to learn from our experience and to adapt the program. Like I said, it's more about the solution, and adopting this integrated, holistic approach with a close coordination and very intensive coordination, we achieve very important results. For example, in terms of nutrition, we saw a huge increase on the consumption of locally produced vegetables. That was possible in part because we worked both on the production of the locally produced vegetables. So on the first pillar of food security, which is availability, we worked also on the business component to give means to the population to buy those vegetables that were produced. So that's the second pillar of food security. It's about access, physical and monetary access to the nutritious foods. And it was possible also because with World Food Programme, we did very intensive sensitization. And sensitization, it's especially successful when through the Envisioning a Better Future, when you explain people that the advantage to have a better healthy diet, and they can go quickly to the markets buying the food that they need. And so that's the third pillar of food security, which is about the use of the food. It was the same about the meat consumption, the dairy and milk produced. Like I said, we worked on the locally produced vegetable, and we saw a significant increase, more than 100% increase of locally produced vegetable gardens. It remains on the whole limited to 6% of the population, but working closely with the schools and the kids and having school gardens, we saw really a multiplying effect with the kids going back home and teaching their parents how to grow a kitchen garden and how to consume the vegetables. We saw also contribution to the decrease of malnutrition indicators, stunting, wasting, underweight. We are aware that we are not alone, and we were not alone being responsible for that decrease, but we did a contribution analysis, and we saw that really the program approach and the integrated components were really a key success to those results. What's the link with climate? Because it's still important. Through the water and the livestock components, we worked on the sustainable use of water, sustainable use of land, and I will make the link with the general presentation we started the day with. Reducing meat consumption, for sure, it is a health issue, but pastoralism is not against nature. On the contrary, pastoralism is a way also to protect the lands, to increase its biodiversity, to increase its production capacity if it is managed accordingly. And we worked on that in that perspective. About the climate also, if you go look at the movies on LinkedIn, you will see that the northern part of Tanzania, you have very beautiful reserves and parks, but we were working on very dry areas that during rainy season, you saw lots of grass and it was wonderful, but during dry season, it was just being on the moon, or at least what we can see in the movies. It was all dust everywhere, nothing to eat for the cows. Still, by developing new water points and by developing sustainable management of those water points, linking them with the schools, linking them with the health centers, it was possible to produce at the school a locally produced vegetable throughout the year. And that's a big demonstration. It was the same about livestock and pasture management. And that's the end of my presentation, and I will be happy to answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mathias.
Thank you, Matthias. Thank you very much for your presentation of an integrated program in which several players took part. So thank you for summing up the different components. We would like to ask the participants to So as I said, we will ask the participants to ask their questions and to make their comments. The next speaker is Beverly Longi. She's National Coordinator for Indigenous People on Sustainable Food System in the Philippines. She has a long experience for Indigenous people on sustainable food system. We now give you the floor for your presentation.
Thank you, John. Warmest greetings to all our participants and speakers. Congratulations and thank you to the organizers for inviting us to this important conference on climate justice and health equity. I shall share on Indigenous people's sustainable food systems and the right to self-determination. So let me give a general situation on food security and hunger. In 2020, around 2.37 billion people suffered from moderate to severe hunger. The number of food insecure people swelled by 320 million alone in just 1 year, equivalent to the increases in the previous 5 years combined. And 1.2 billion are in Asia, 799 million are in Africa, and 267 million in Latin America and the Caribbean. Worldwide, the number of people facing hunger reached about 768 million in 2020. And we believe that the situation of food insecurity and hunger worsens until and unless we identify and stop the causes of hunger and food insecurity. So is hunger, health, and climate change or climate emergency related? Yes. We say that the climate emergency directly contributes to hunger, disease, and illness, thus the need for more inclusive partnerships, more development cooperation, and solidarity to address the issue now, not in 2030 or 2050. So last July, an international coalition of at least 20 civil society organizations organized the Global People's Summit on Food Systems to address the increasing number of cases of hunger and food insecurity worldwide. This culminated on September 23 with a declaration to end corporate monopoly control, fight for people's rights to a just, equitable, healthy, and sustainable food systems. I invite you to read and endorse the declaration. So despite COVID-19, we successfully held the Global People's Summit through a series of virtual platforms as participants cannot meet in person because of travel and health restrictions. So as far as the indigenous peoples are concerned, we held consultations that focus on our indigenous food systems, the threats and challenges to these food systems, and our recommendations to sustain and enhance our food system amidst many challenges. These activities identified the importance of social solidarity and collective efforts in addressing community needs that are crucial in strengthening the communities. So my presentation is a consolidation of the reports from key areas of Northeast India, Sabah in Malaysia, the Karen territory in Burma, and indigenous peoples communities in the Philippines, with comments from Bangladesh, West Papua, Kenya, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Bolivia. So what are the main recommendations that came out of these consultations to address the urgent problems of environmental destruction and climate change? One, we affirmed that indigenous peoples' knowledge systems, traditional practices, cultural and communal values are much needed to adopt and mitigate the impacts of climate change. The actions of indigenous peoples to defend our lands, territories, and waters is also a fight against climate change. We can enhance indigenous values for the common good to transform the current corporate-driven destruction into sustainable, people-led, sustainable development. Instead of denying, states and corporations should recognize, respect, and support these indigenous-led initiatives and solutions to climate change. The said consultations also concluded that colonization and capitalism through neoliberal policies are the culprits behind the worsening crisis on food, climate, and health. It is this system that shapes global politics and economies around profit over people, around profit over the future of our planet. So what does this mean for indigenous peoples? What are the key findings as far as it is related to us and our topic today? One, this would mean an intensification of development aggression by big foreign and state-owned corporations. It would mean the further dispossession of indigenous peoples of lands. It would mean more dams, more mines, more commercial and monocrop plantations in indigenous peoples' lands. And we have seen this in Northeast India, wherein large dams such as Mapitel in Manipur and extractive industries in Meghalaya led to land grabbing and food insecurity of indigenous peoples. In Sabah, the pending construction of Kaiduan Dam threatens to displace around 1,400 indigenous Dasun, and the dam shall increase food scarcity as it would submerge fertile lands and hunting grounds aside from the homes, schools, and sacred cultural sites. Huge mining firms also took interest in Congo's large mining resources and water supplies. This would deny indigenous and other rural communities access to water, which is very necessary for agriculture, sanitation, hygiene, and health. And we have the same issues coming out in Ghana and also in Kenya. Two, climate change would negatively affect indigenous agricultural systems and practices. This would aggravate natural disasters that negatively impact on the livelihood and income of indigenous farmers. Here in the Philippines, recent strong typhoons destroyed future rice harvests. All noted that the abrupt season changes or unpredictable weather patterns confuse the performance of indigenous traditions and practices that are dependent on the description of seasons. Three, the corporatization of food systems. leads to the commercialization and destruction of positive food and agricultural indigenous practices and the production of unhealthy and less nutritious food. Organic and traditional food production systems are declining, and seed varieties are greatly reduced. Hybrid seeds dependent on dangerous pesticides and fertilizers produced by foreign seed companies are replacing traditional varieties. Native species are fast disappearing due to the fast destruction of natural habitats and ecosystems and the introduction of bioengineered varieties even in the hinterlands of the Philippines. Thus, there is very much strong concern with the increased role of international financial institutions such as the World Bank in promoting private sector interests or agribusiness to dominate the agricultural sector. Fourth, conflict and displacement in indigenous areas and communities as states protect private investment via militarization. We have seen this in all indigenous communities, but especially in West Papua. Around 41,000 indigenous Papuans were forced to flee their homes because of Indonesia's heavy military operations. This is done to protect and advance food estate projects by the government in Indonesia. Case in point, the Mirawaque Integrated Food Energy Estate has aggravated food insecurity and dispossessed indigenous peoples by converting over 1.3 million hectares of prime forest areas to cultivate commercial food crops, sugarcane, oil plantations, and industrial tree plantations. So how did indigenous peoples respond to these issues? One, addressing the issue of land, climate change, poverty and hunger, civil liberties and freedoms should be done from the perspective of human rights or people's rights. Indigenous peoples confront these issues in our struggle for self-determination and liberation. And at the core of this is the defense of our land, territories, and resources. This is a rights-based approach for indigenous peoples, a struggle that is integrated and comprehensive. This would also emphasize the indigenous view of land is life as one that values communal ownership over private ownership. It brings the perspective on food systems that are naturally and safely produced, provide necessary nutrition, and are shared. It encourages simple living, reuse, reduce, recycle against wasteful lifestyles. Two, through collective work, indigenous communities practice intercropping, crop diversification, and the use of traditional seeds, organic fertilizers, and organic pesticides. Indigenous farming is self-reliant and self-sustaining, and we need to enhance and improve this. These are just a few examples of sustainable agricultural practices that would also strengthen traditional knowledge systems on agriculture. Number three, participating in wider campaigns and activities that would amplify our situation, that would amplify our calls, aspirations, and alternatives on indigenous people's issues that are, or other matters that are relevant to us. These campaigns and activities include, but are not limited to, enhancing traditional community environmental conservation practices, promote natural ecosystem and habitat regeneration instead of false so-called nature-based or community-based solutions. Next, it would involve the protection and promotion of indigenous seeds through knowledge sharing and exchange. It would also emphasize the role of indigenous women in decision-making, protecting and regaining traditional knowledge, traditions, and capacities. As we have seen in Glasgow and in other parts of the world, we should recognize the role and encourage the mobilization of the youth in sustaining indigenous food systems and culture. And we should also support ongoing initiatives to set up indigenous schools and education for communities and others about their rights, scientific knowledge, and the environment. And of course, lastly, the need for more stronger social solidarity and collective efforts in strengthening our our communities. I would like to end my presentation by sharing a bit of what we did in Glasgow. I would like to end by the chants that we did in the streets of Glasgow and elsewhere. And it goes like this: people, planet over profit, people, planet over profit, system change, not climate change. We are unstoppable. A better world is possible. Yaman, maraming salamat, and thank you very much. This ends my presentation. Back to you, John.
Merci beaucoup, Beverly. Thank you very much.
Your presentation highlighted the place that was given to the indigenous people in this climate change process. They do have a role to play, and we must take that into account. We received questions from our audience. The first one is directed to Matthias. Well, let me start first with Beverly. Beverly, there's a question for you as you have the floor. And the question is now the following. We were talking about hydropower, which is green energy.
La question est celle-ci. Hein? Nous parlons d'hydroélectricité, qui est une énergie verte. Hydropower is a green energy. How can you reconcile this with the idea of protecting natural resources and the environment?
Thanks, John. I think we need to define what is the meaning of green energy, because from experience, we have seen that when we speak of hydropower, this is not actually green energy. So it's not reconcilable. So what I'm trying to say is that we have to redefine the meaning of green energy as being peddled by government and corporations that are what you call gaining profit over all of this hydro energy production.
Fine. Matthias, there is a question for you. Is about your successful projects. We need to know how much you think that local NGO and can continue your project after these implementations there and also abroad. How do you think it is possible that they appropriate this successful project?
Yeah, thank you. It's a very good question. And so indeed, we worked, every partner, every international partner implementing its component worked with local partners. So being NGOs, civil society organization, member-based organization. So there was a strong component of transfer, but also of sharing knowledge, co-creation together. That was really important in the design. If I take the coordination that I was implementing, I worked with the government, the national government, local government, and I managed in the 5 years to change the dynamics between government and NGOs, which can be so very often in opposition, to work together. And now I'm very happy when I have some feedback from people I used to work in Tanzania, who tells me, yeah, that guy from the government is helping us very much in our new program and so on. And that's really a success for me. Another success example, the last steering committee that we did for the program, it was the people from the government, the focal persons, who reported what they saw in the field from the work that we did. And they reported to us what they did, and they gave us our advices, and we exchanged way forwards together. Instead of having the project manager coming and presenting PowerPoints for 15 minutes, now it's what's really a good exchange with the government. And lastly, we worked strongly with the communities. So each component worked with people from the communities to be ambassadors of every component.
Ah, that's fine. That's very fine. There is another question asked to you, but also to Justin. I'll give the floor to Just. Juste une question a été posée ici. En fait, c'est en lien avec.
Just, I have a question to put to you, and it is related to the development policy. They are orienting towards specialization, but the present cases shows a lot of positive results for integrated approaches. What do you think about it? The same question to Matthias. Integrated approach are showing more positive results than what we thought. So maybe just can say a word and then Matthias. Okay, surely enough, Matthias will supplement what I said. The specialized approach only allows for solving part of the problem because of the interdependence of this problem. If you solve only part of the problem, you are always coming back to the start box. It's like in our now, you can deal with malnutrition, but if you do not tackle climate, if you do not go for an integrated approach, if you do not tackle deforestation, climate change, and so on, you will have more and more malnutrition cases that will appear. So we do recommend an integrated approach for problem solving. Otherwise, you treat symptoms but no cause. And as I am a doctor, this is what I aim for. Matthias, maybe you want to complement? Yes, I fully agree with you. I simply would like to add that it's not just development cooperation policies or donors. It's not just about that. Active synergies is not natural. And I have no explanation as to why this is not natural, but it is in fact very difficult to have it work. One of the explanations that it requires time and energy to understand other people's expectations, constraints, and to integrate all these expectations, constraints in your own work. There is a proverb saying that well, I don't remember the exact proverb, it says Matthias, but basically it says that if you want to go far, you need to go together, and I'm sure someone will help me with it. So it's nothing natural, but for me, it is key. If I take the example of Mauritania, we have INABEL, we have the European Union, we have different health intervention, notably voluntary disease insurance, and we have food safety program. This insurance would be very useful for farmers with whom we are working, but both interventions are not working on the same area. So that's really something I'm trying to put together, because I can definitely see the advantages, the comparative advantages that can come out of it. And I would like also to say that for me, nutrition is an impact indicator for development project, be it education, be it entrepreneurship, be it health, whatever type of intervention when it comes to development. At the end of the day, it may have an impact on nutrition. And I think that this is something that could really federate our actions, but that's what we need to do together. Thank you. Yes, we need to do it together. I fully agree with you too. Nutrition alone does not work without education, without health, and without other development possibilities. There is another question which is directed to Beverly.
Valorization of indigenous knowledge. But the question is, do you believe that international NGO and development actors should take more clear positions even when this is going against their governments and donors?
Uh, yes, I would think so. No, but we are now in a stage wherein we should be able to encourage, as I mentioned, inclusive partnerships, effective development cooperation, and solidarity. So that would mean really the different actors, no, civil society, governments, even private sector, being able to come together. But this should be under the framework of putting people at the heart of development. Because when we do away with that core principle, then that's where the problem comes in, no? The disagreement. But we have seen in many experiences that when all of us come together, we are able to really come out with best solutions. And then we can actually, probably at the start, we would need to have more convincing and negotiations with our governments. But I think, it's also about time that we also try to, for lack of a better word, to educate even donors, no? Because if indeed we are putting people at the heart of development, then it shouldn't be an issue, and we should be able to allow more spaces for dialogue, to look that our projects are responsive to the needs of the local communities that we commit to support, instead of the concepts that are most likely going to be imposed by donors. I would like to believe that donors along this process would be enlightened, as we have seen in many instances. But well, the new one that's developing now also will be, how do we combine all of this in relation to the issue of also asserting or protecting civil and political rights? Because we now also see now a rise of attacks against human rights defenders, environmental defenders, or any form of dissent. So that is something that I think that the states and all of us should also work side by side. Again, I would repeat, we should always put people at the heart of development, and that would define our cooperation and inclusive partnerships. Thanks, John.
Thank you. I noticed that together we can ameliorate dialogue and try to change the mind of the donor and the government for what you think. But at least we have 2 minutes. Can you give us another example of traditional practice another example of Philippines, of traditional practice that mitigate climate change?
Okay.
Now we can to inspire other people movement abroad.
I think one would be, we are now in the stage of revitalizing much of our customary laws that would govern the use and management of land, water, and natural resources. And there are now several enhancement of our rules that would govern hunting and fishing within very specified time. We also have customary laws in relation to the cutting of trees. When do you cut trees? How much can you cut trees? And what is the use of the wood that you would cut? But I would also like to share that at this time, it might be late compared to other indigenous peoples. We are now trying to combine the use of these positive customary laws in relation to digital and 3D mapping of our lands and territories, not only to ascertain the boundaries of certain communities with one another, but also to do the mapping.
Few seconds, yes.
Yeah, to map according to the people's perspective on land use and management. And this would include the mapping also of biodiversity resources. And this has been very successful in some communities that were fighting mining. No, so we were able to show that if you do mining in this area, it will affect these communities.
That's fine. I want to thank everyone. Time is up. I thank also the coordination of this plenary. Thank you for Matthias, Gis Momboto, Beverly, and everyone.
Thank you, Jean-Claude. This was really a nice session. And thanks to the organization.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Nice to meet everybody
Thank
here.
you very
Thanks.
much. See you. See you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Clovis Kalobu. You did this with a preciseness, on the spot, on the second. And thank you all speakers, Justin Momboto, Matthias Lardinois, and Beverly Longid for this participation.